Compassion. We hear it all the time, but we seldom really consider the profundity of the meaning of the word as it relates to our Buddhist practice. So, it's a typical English word. It's often confused with empathy or sympathy, and I'll go through the various meanings in vernacular of social constructs, samsara. But the special profundity, the depth of its meaning as it relates to our Buddhist practice. It's different, not because it's altogether different, but because, again, the extension of the word within Buddhism. This happens a lot with Buddhism. Like we talked about karma, and you can look that up in the book, but I don't think the book will talk. Well, it probably does talk about the history of karma. But there are many words that when Shakyamuni came about explaining how the mind works and the deepest truths of all phenomena, there were many words that were in common language that he either extended the meaning of or really extended them to the point where they had a whole new meaning, like karma and other words. Compassion is in that mix, and I'll leave it to you to see how radical the change is. From the dictionary.com, let's see if my mouth will work today. As a noun, compassion is a feeling of deep sympathy, there it is, and sorrow, interesting, because we read a lot of translations into English and French and other Western languages of within all the sutras, wherever there's a situation where Buddha or Bodhisattvas look upon others in order to assist them, the word pity is used a lot. I don't think that's appropriate in Buddhism, but it may be the closest thing in language, Western language, to approximate. We'll get into that in a moment. But here it is in a dictionary definition: sympathy and sorrow for another who is stricken by misfortune, accompanied by, and this is the important part, a strong desire to alleviate the suffering. Almost sounds Buddhist, right? But as much as you might say, well, there it is, why do you need to talk about it any further? Let's understand that part of that definition from a samsaric point of view and from a Buddhist point of view. Very different. Let me go on. Verb, used with an object. Archaic, to have compassion for, to be compassionate, or nate. From Merriam-Webster, another source, sympathetic consciousness of others' distress together with a desire to alleviate. There it is again. And that's a key difference of compassion to what most people would say, well, it's like empathy. Yes, but let's walk through it now. Well, let me see if I captured it in the definition, which is why we're doing these. I'm doing these videos, right? What is the difference between empathy and compassion? Also from Merriam-Webster, by the way. Compassion and empathy both refer to a caring response to someone else's distress, right? While empathy refers to an active sharing in the emotional experience of another person, compassion adds to that emotional experience a desire to alleviate the person's distress. Compassion goes beyond, you lost your house in a fire. That's horrible. That's terrible. I remember when I was a kid, my best friend, their house burnt down, and they went through that. And see, you're sympathizing and you're empathizing with their pain and their distress. Compassion, though, does all of that, but also says, look, we've got a spare room in our house and a lot of room in the barn. We can store whatever you have left from the fire, and you're welcome to stay with us until you get back on your feet. That's more than empathy, you see. That's getting involved, engaging with the person's struggle to deal with this right? So compassion. See how different that is? Now, we'll get into the Buddhist addition or extension of this term. So here we go. This term appears often in Buddhist texts, translations. The above definitions are usually sufficient in everyday social circumstances, but they fall short of the concept in relation to bodhisattva or Buddhahood. For the Buddhist, this sense of compassion extends into the very nature of life as defined by Shakyamuni throughout his teachings. For a simple reference, the Four Noble Truths clearly state that the state of life, human life, sentient life, and now we are squarely in the mind and its samsaric perceptions, is itself a state of stress, anxiety, and pain. This is a constant aspect of living a human life. It's not a particular incident. It's not a social construct. It's a fact of all phenomena that being sentient, you are what? Dukkha. You see how that compassion suddenly extends to life itself. Now, the person whose house burnt down appreciates your empathy as much as they can in the moments they're suffering. The person whose house burns down appreciates your compassion. Oh, yes, I need a place to, you're solving my immediate traumas. That compassion, very, very deep, profound. But now the Buddhist compassion says, I understand this is an event that's a huge struggle. And how do we look at struggles as Buddhists? Not struggles to remain in samsara and comfortable, struggles to aim for our enlightenment. Everything's a measure of how we experience life. This house burning down is a tremendous, stressful, anxiety-filled thing in samsara. But that as a Buddhist, we also see it, and we may not want to share that because that person isn't ready to hear it. But in our minds, we understand this is an amazing opportunity. This is a clearinghouse of attachments, clinging, right? That's the trauma this person's feeling, not the loss of their house and their photo album and where they're going to live. What they've lost is a huge chunk of their samsaric obstacle. They don't understand that. So this is where Buddhist compassion comes in and says, don't worry. This is an opportunity. This is, and again, you have to be careful depending on who you're dealing with. They don't want to hear it's an opportunity in the moment, or they might. You've cleared out so much stuff that isn't necessary for you to be fulfilled and feel your life in its full potential. Yeah, you can stay with me, or I'll help you find a place. Yeah, I'll do all that samsaric stuff, but most importantly, you need to chant through this. You need to empower your mind to not be sucked down and held by all this pain, because the pain that you think you're being held to is you holding on to that pain. Again, how this works in the dynamics of interpersonal relationship, there's so innumerable ways, right? But you see where the Buddhist compassion is a very different lens on suffering, stress, anxiety, right? It's not about the samsaric possessions and losses. It's about samsara, the much larger view of the situation. So let me go on with the book here. Therefore, Buddhism, or Buddhist practice, understands all life, quote unquote, as endemic of mental experience of suffering and in need of alleviation this condition of suffering. Does that make sense? This is not merely situational, although inclusive and sensitive to particular struggles. Buddhist compassion extends the responsibility to others as the fundamental fact that all sentient minds must be awakened in order to reach their own healing potentials. In the context of this conversation, right? It's healing because it puts the situation of samsaric possessions and their loss in their proper place, not as losses, but actually as gains, right? Opportunity to reopen Gohanzon mind that has been clouded and obscured by the vast possessions database warehouse of identity in samsara. Right? You can start fresh, start anew, redevelop your mind and your experience of life without the baggage. This is important to understand, as it means that although we care to assist those in specific circumstances, it is the far deeper goal to teach others to find and awaken their capacity for preventing suffering at its source and by their own self-teaching. You will rise out of this, right? The phoenix from the flames. I know, bad pun, but a good analogy, right? So, compassion. A word I had forgotten about until working on this book and recently added. That's why we're a little bit out of alphabetical sync here, as it were. But anyway, I'm glad I got the opportunity to discuss that with you. And now I'll close this. What's our next one here? We just finished Ishinin Sanzen. Oh, yeah. And quite appropriately, the next word is identification. So, I'll do that in a moment. First, let's close this one out. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your practice. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo, Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Keep your practice strong. Keep studying. Don't forget, take a moment to like and subscribe. So important, our Bodhisattva effort to make this resource available to as many people as possible, help propagate this teaching, yes? Those of you who, again, you know who you are, buying ebooks, buying print books. By the way, anything I add in these videos as I go, I'm adding to the PDF that's online, that's available through threefoldlotus.com as the ebook. The print book, we just got it. We're starting to go through it with a fine-tooth comb, as it were, to make sure we're as clear and concise and free of typos and grammatical errors as much as we're able. And when that's done, then the print book will be updated and made available on lulu.com. Right now, you can only get the electronic one, first of all, because it's easy for me to update that one. No fees for updating it. Lulu's getting funny about their costs for publishing, so I'm being more careful now. And that's okay. That works out well. And those of you patrons, we would be nowhere without you. And it's our coffers are slowly growing so that I can get a better computer to do these. Well, yeah, I skipped some frames today. Anyway. Everything is about making this resource as valuable as possible to encourage your confidence, right? Your resolve, and get rid of doubt so that you can practice clear-mindedly, single-mindedly to instantiate your Buddha-ness, yeah? So take care of your health, be kind, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.